الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما عما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. آمين وبعد. Indeed, all praises for Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. We seek His guidance, we seek His forgiveness, we put our faith in Him and our reliance upon Him. And we seek refuge in Allah from the evil consequences of our actions. Whomsoever Allah has guided, that there is no one to mislead him. And whomsoever Allah has allowed to go astray, that there is no one to guide him. And we bear witness and we testify that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is His slave and His messenger. Alhamdulillah is to Him who has given us the life today, the ability today to wake up from our beds and come here and gather in the house of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, who has given us oxygen in our lungs to be able to make it here so that we can fulfill the commandment of فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, race and rush to the remembrance of your Lord, as is stated in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, and so that we can invigorate our iman as individuals, as families, and as a community. With Ramadan upon us in just less than 40 days, I think it's best suited that we discuss a little bit about the preparation for this holy month. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Qul Ameen. Ameen. We pray that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala allows us to see this holy month of Ramadan. And this month is the month of the Quran. شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. That it is in this month that the Quran was revealed. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about this book of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, the miracle that lives with us every single day. And when I say miracle, I want you to think about the time of Musa alayhi salam. At the time of Musa alayhi salam, when he has had his showdown with the magicians, and now Fir'aun and his armies are chasing him, and they're after them for blood, and they are about to cross the Red Sea, and the commandment comes to Musa alayhi salam to put your staff down, and as he does it, the seas start to part. And his people, the children of Israel, the Bani Israel, they start to make their way through. And the army is right on their backs. And as they start to come, the waters converge once again. The waters converge once again and they drown the enemies. And the people that witnessed this with their own eyes, the children of Israel, those that witnessed this and after this, if they still disbelieved, then we would easily make the conclusion that these are people that have transgressed and they are people that have disbelieved. Similarly, if you go to the time of Isa alayhi salam, when healing and medicine and science was the forum in which they showed their prowess, and you see that he is raising the dead and he is curing the leper, and the people that witnessed this with their naked eye, and they saw this, and still after this, if they were to disbelieve, if they were to still disbelieve after this, then you can make the argument and the conclusion that these are people that have truly disbelieved and transgressed. And so today we have this book that has been bound in a cover, but before this, it was the speech, and it still is the eternal speech of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala that was given from the Creator of the heavens and the earth to Jibreel alayhi salam, to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There is a narration where in those days the Quraysh used to love to put each other down. if somebody said something, they'd like to correct their sentences. And perhaps you know people like that in your family. They used to want to correct people. If somebody made poetry, they would try to make fun of them and mock them. And that was what they competed on. They competed on eloquence. And so a man by the name of Walid ibn Mughira at that time was the one that was most known, and he was not a Muslim. He was actually an enemy of Islam. And he was the most known to have the highest of eloquence in the land from amongst the Quraysh. And so the elders and the elite of Quraysh, they see that this man Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has come with this new religion. And according to them, he is breaking apart the families, and all he's doing is reciting these words. He's not raising the dead. He's not splitting the sea. He's reciting these words and is changing the hearts of people. And they are now turning towards monotheism. And so they hire him. And they say to him, go to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and challenge him. Challenge him. In the way that people challenge each other in spoken word or freestyle rap, they say challenge him. And so he goes to him. And he starts to say very belittling things to our Prophet ﷺ. He says to him that, what is it that you want, O Muhammad? You want women? Look at our tribe. We'll marry you with any one of them. Is it leadership that you seek? We'll make you the leader of the tribes, if that's what you want. If it's money, we'll give you all the money that you can even imagine. And the Prophet ﷺ, as described about his mannerisms and his attributes in the Shomail of Imam Tirmidhi, he used to wait for people to finish. And he asked him, are you done? Are you finished? And then he starts to recite the verses of Surah Al-Fusilat. And as he is reciting, Walid ibn Mughira, this man that came to put the Prophet ﷺ down, he starts to cry so profusely that the narration says that his beard starts to get soaked. And he goes back to the Quraysh and he tells them that this man and these words that he's speaking, this is from a divine source. And that nothing can overwhelm it. It will overwhelm everything that comes to it. It will overwhelm everything that comes to it. The Quran presents a challenge that bring anything, even a single verse like it. Even a single verse. So if you think about this man, Abu Lahab, who was an enemy of the Prophet ﷺ, and he died as such, he has an entire surah that is dedicated to him. The children learn it in pre-K. And this surah is condemning him to damnation, to eternal hell. And if he, and Abu Lahab was a very slick sort of person, he could have easily said that, you know what, even in jest, he could have said, you know what, I believe. I believe your message, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I believe your message, everything that you brought, just to play around. But Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala knows that it's not in the nature of this man to accept his deen. That he's not going to be honored and dignified with his deen. And this surah that is eternal tells of his future coming. And even if he wanted to, he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He could have easily disproven the Quran in a way, but he did not do it. This book comes to people and it's internalized by those that are God conscious. And that's what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says when he starts with Surah Al-Baqarah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fi hudan lil-muttaqin. That is a book that has no doubt. Which author do you know? Which author do you know that starts a book in his acknowledgements or in the preface and says that this is a book that has no doubt? Right? Authors usually are making apologies in the beginning of the book. That I've done my best to put this piece of work together, this body of work, and this is what I've put forth. But Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala is starting with, this is a book that has no doubt, and it is a guidance for those people that are God conscious. Those people that are God conscious. What is our purpose in Ramadan? That after the fasting that we do, the fasting that has been prescribed to us, that was prescribed to those that came before us, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you become people that are God conscious. But here's the news. You don't start in Ramadan. You start now in Rajab and Sha'ban. You start to prepare yourself. You start to prepare yourself. You know, a lot of the people that are my age, 25, 35, 40, A lot of us, we go to work during, do our 9 to 5 and so on, and then during the weekends we're very active. We're playing sports and things like that. But because our bodies are not attuned to it, we come back on Monday with all sorts of injuries, right? Because our bodies are not attuned to it. And if you are somebody, and this is not something that you have to admit in public, but if you admit it to yourself, if you're somebody that feels that you've been disconnected from this book of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, because in the same way that the people saw the seas parting, in the same way that the people saw at the time of Isa alayhi salam, that he's curing the leper and he's raising the dead, we have this book, this amazing book. They started to analyze the Quran after it was bound in a book. Because in the beginning, in the early days, it was only given as speech. The Prophet ﷺ would receive the message and then he would give it to the companions, radiallahu anhum. And later on, when they compile it into a book, they start to see some amazing things. They see that the word ad-dunya exists in this book 115 times. The word ad-dunya exists 115 times. Similarly, the word akhirah also exists 115 times. SubhanAllah. It's being revealed over 23 years. The first 2/3 are Makki Quran. The last 1/3 is Madani Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah is revealed over a course of 10 years. Which ayah goes where, which verse goes where, which surah goes where, the Prophet ﷺ knows, because he's divinely guided. And you start to make this analysis of the Quran and they find out that, think about this khutbah, how many times I'm going to say Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, or how many times I'm going to say Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Nobody's keeping count here. I'm not keeping count. 88 times the word malaika comes. Angels, 88 times the word malaika comes. Similarly, the word shayateen comes 88 times in the Quran. SubhanAllah. The word for death comes 145 times. Al-Maut comes 145 times. The word for life, Al-Hayat, comes 145 times in the Quran. The word for months, Shahr, comes 12 times in the Quran. Iblis is mentioned 11 times. And conversely, al-isti'adha min ash-shaytan, to seek refuge and penance from the shaitan, also exists 11 times in the Quran. The Quran is having a conversation. There's a dialogue that's happening in this book where the Prophet ﷺ, he's being told, say to the people this. So he's being asked questions. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. They ask you, O Muhammad, about gambling and alcohol. Qul, tell them this. This is the answer. And in this way, they say, qalu, and then, qul, Muhammad, you say this. And a dialogue is taking place. 332 times, qalu shows up in the Quran. 332 times, the word qul shows up in the Quran. So scholars, as they started to study this, they used to say, Ma ajaba hadal kalam. How strange is this speech? How strange is this speech? And these are, some of the most shallow miracles that we've seen in the Quran. The fact that it shows embryology before embryology was even discovered. The stages of embryology are vividly described in the Quran before any scientist had the inkling of an idea of what it is. And it's described in plain detail. The water condensation cycle is described in detail. All of these things, and yet it's not a book of science. It's not a book of history. It's a book of guidance. I say this stuff to you and to myself as a reminder so that it softens our hearts and that we remember that this is the same miracle. This is a higher level of miracle that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala gave the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it cannot be challenged until the day of judgment, and it is sitting in our shelves. It's sitting on our shelves. It's almost as if when we look at that book, it's like we're seeing the seas part if we were with Musa. It's like we were seeing somebody raised from the dead if we were with Isa alayhi salam. May Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala make us people of Quran, turn back to this book. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave us an admonishment. And I want to remind this, and if you remember nothing from this khutbah, remember this. He ﷺ, he said that on the day of judgment, the Quran is going to be presented. And on that day, it will either testify for you or it will testify against you. Think about when's the last time you picked up this book and actually read from it and try to understand it and let it to guide your life. Allow it to guide your life. Do you want the Quran to be a prosecutor against you on the Day of Judgment, or do you want it to be your defense attorney, coming to your defense and saying, oh Allah, he used to recite from me. He used to recite and day and night, and he used to keep me close, and he used to use me for guidance and guide his family with this. May Allah Ta'ala make us people of Quran. May Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq to turn back to this book before the month of Ramadan arrives, so that when we go into the month of Ramadan, we go into it with a soft heart. Idu Allah yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم صل على سيدنا وحبيبنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد. There is a narration that we come to know from Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, who at the time was not a Muslim. And these elders of the Quraysh, they used to go to the youth and they said that if this man Muhammad comes around, what you need to do is you need to start making a lot of noise. They used to tell the youth this. They used to say, bring out the women and tell them to start singing. Subdue what he's trying to say. Right? When he's reciting these verses, subdue what he's trying to say. And they themselves had heard the Quran from his mouth. And it intrigued them. They were curious. The words sounded, they used to call him a madman, Majnoon. They used to call him a sha'ir, that he's a poet. And he was none of these things. And so they wanted to go find out. And they go to his house in the middle of the night. And each of them is in a different location of the house, and they're listening intently to the Quran the entire night. Because the Prophet ﷺ used to pray Qiyamul Layl through the entire night. And then, on the way home, they meet up on a path, each of them not knowing that the other one was there. And they ask, what are you doing here, and what are you doing here? And everybody confesses that we were listening to Muhammad. I was listening to Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they make a pact amongst themselves that if the people of the city find out, then we're obviously labeled hypocrites. So we can't do this again. Let's all go quietly to our houses, and what just happened never happened. Let's keep our mouths shut. And this happens again a second night. That they come and they listen the entire night intently. And then they meet on the path again and they say, what are you doing here? I thought we made a deal and I thought you weren't going to be back. And then they go home. It happens a third time. Finally, they meet up at Abu Jahl's house. And they're asking and talking amongst each other, and they say, well, what do you think? You think he's a crazy person? And everyone agrees, no, he's not crazy. Do you think he's a poet? No, doesn't seem like he's a poet. What he's saying is the truth. But here's the deal. If we were to accept him, that he is a prophet of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we are admitting defeat. Because he's from the other tribe, and there is no higher station to have somebody from amongst you that's a prophet. And so if we were to do that, then we're going to admit to eternal defeat. And so we can't do that. It was a thing about keeping status in society. And so we're going to continue to push him away. The only reason we find out about this is because Abu Sufyan turns into a Muslim later on. After the opening of Mecca, he converts to Islam and he takes the Shahada. Now, here's the interesting thing. You listen to this narration and you say, well, that's nice. Well, think about this. The disbeliever of that time is there listening to the Quran the entire night intently. And the believer of today, you and I, when we come to Taraweeh, when we come to the prayers, we cannot wait for the Imam to go into ruku. The disbeliever of that time wants to listen to the Quran, is actively and intently listening to the Quran, and you and I, we can't wait to finish up our 8 rakahs or 20 rakahs and just get on home. There's a gap there. And it starts with our hearts, brothers and sisters. It starts with re-engaging the Quran. And there's a glad tidings for those of us that are, this is not a native language for us. That Arabic is not a native language for us, because there is multiple reward for those, as the Prophet ﷺ tells us in his hadith, that there is multiple reward for those that struggle with the book and still try to read it. So may Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala open up our hearts, and may He allow us and give us the tawfiq to take time out of our busy 24 hours to pick up this book and read it. Read the translation, listen to lectures. If you're traveling to work, YouTube, halaltube.com, put on a lecture and listen to it. Listen to, in particular, stories that you might be interested in. Listen to the story of Surah Yusuf, right? If you don't know it already, listen to it from another speaker. You'll be spellbound by the message of the Quran. And so use your car, use your driving time, use your downtime. Instead of watching TV, use some of that time to engage with the book of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. May Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala make us people of Quran, so that on the day of judgment, when we are risen, the Quran is testifying for us and not against us. And make dua for the people of Syria. Please, please make dua for the people of Syria when you are in your sujood today, on Yom al-Jum'ah, this blessed day. That city of Aleppo is bleeding. The innocent and the brave people of Syria. If you haven't turned on the news, please pray for them. That's the best that we can do from here. Thousands of miles away is send our prayers. The Prophet ﷺ said that the Muslim Ummah is like one body. When one body part is ailing, it's like the rest of the body is up in insomnia and fever. And if that is not impacting our hearts, then we have to check ourselves. That if our brothers and sisters are suffering but it doesn't impact us, then we have to check ourselves. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقيموا الصلاة.